Morning, everybody. I've come to present to you a little bit about the next phase of AgShare. Yesterday, we were basically introduced to it and heard a little bit about the pilot and some of people's experiences, the outcomes, and the lessons that we learned. And now we're in the process of starting up the next phase. So what I'm going to do, my part is easy, is I'm going to give you a brief overview of this, and then we want to pick your brains. I mean, the whole idea, we told you up front yesterday, we're here to pick your brains. And in this phase of the project, the main focus is on checking out replicability, effectiveness, and understanding what it might mean to institutionalize this approach in a financially sustainable way in the universities that we're working with, whilst ensuring that we get quality outputs, widespread dissemination, and uptake. Our project, we're working together on the project as three partners: MSU, RUFORUM. As you heard from Nodumo yesterday, RUFORUM is an organization that is involved in capacity building for 30 African universities that offer agriculture. And they are our new strategic partner for many reasons, but they basically give us a target population to work with that consists of 30 universities, which is basically ideal. Before I talk about or give you an overview of the project, I just wanted to make a few comments. We did a number of activities yesterday and heard a number of presentations, and it's given us a lot of very useful feedback, things that we need to really think about and engage with moving forward. I was particularly interested in the comments and feedback on the translational scholar characteristics, how we might go about assessing impact, having AgShare as a one-stop shop for agriculture knowledge, and definitely the idea of using mobile applications. And I think that as a team, we're going to have to engage with some of these things to see whether we might be able to, to what extent we can fit them in moving forward, and so on. One of the things that raised the question for me was the whole idea of MOOCs. And my initial thought on the idea of MOOCs was, are MOOCs suitable for use within our present African development context? That was the question it raised for me, and I'm sort of reflecting on it. I'm hoping that talking to other people, I may find an answer. Okay, in terms of the project, our vision is the sustainable use of AgShare methods, driven particularly by ongoing student engagement in community research, content development, and knowledge sharing activities in postgraduate programs at African faculties of agriculture, and it actively supports agricultural communities to effect positive change against key identified agricultural chains. Yesterday, John presented this sort of model of what it is we're doing, where we are basically generating information and OERs and getting involved in sort of technology transfer and skills generation to result in improved agricultural teaching and learning first and foremost. That is our main focus. And then hopefully we are assuming that out of that we'll be empowering farming stakeholders. Now, in terms of this next phase, our expectations are that we're going to be working with African faculties of agriculture and vet science, and that they will embed student-centered action research activities and outputs into teaching and learning and use them to support the development of smallholder farmers, and that we'd also be able to facilitate widespread development and dissemination of the AgShare methodology and its outputs through the RUFORUM network. So we've kind of set some parameters for ourselves. Who are we working with? Yesterday you heard from Haramaya University, where there are 2 programs. Mekelle University is a new institution that is coming on board. And at Mekelle there are 2 programs, one with vet science and a new one that is coming on board, where we're going to have a collaboration between the College of Computer and Information Science, all right, and the College of Agriculture. And another newcomer on the program is going to be Sokoine University in Tanzania. Plus, in order to keep up some continuity, we are going to be working with people that we are terming AgShare champions that were based at institutions that were initially involved in the pilot. So people like Francis at USIU and so on are going to continue on with the program. The reason why we couldn't take them all back on is because of the Gates Foundation's areas of focus, and right now Kenya is not one of them. Our main project objectives focus on the creation of an enabling institutional environment to support the adoption of the AgShare approach in identified programs, development of institutional capacity so that we can get staff that can design, develop, find, and use OERs to support and enhance their curricula and their programs. And of course, then we want to facilitate widespread dissemination and use of the methodology as a whole and of the outputs using multiple methods. And doing this, we understand that we need to get involved in achieving an environment that will facilitate institutionalization and access to the associated funding required for the sustainable and effective use of the methodology within institutions. We know that it costs, we are calling for change, but we know that that change has financial and other implications. So part of this phase is going to be about understanding what does it mean and what do we need to do in order to institutionalize. And then we're also going to be interrogating issues relating to actual scaling up, moving from where we were before, and interrogating the effectiveness of what it is we are selling. We've had discussions about which programs we want to target. We are all in agreement. All the programs must have an agricultural value chain focus, and a couple of different suggestions were made by the various team members. It will vary from institution to institution, but we agreed that because RUFORUM is our strategic partner in this instance, they must have some say in some of the stuff that they want done, because what we're trying to do is to build capacity with them, for them. We're targeting funded MSc students starting or getting involved in any participatory value chain research during 2014. Now, when we talk about the funded students, we are not talking about students that have bursaries and scholarships. In this instance, we are targeting self-funded students. And our reasoning behind that was that often students that have bursaries and scholarships, there's certain things that they're expected to get involved in and do. And so there's lots of strings attached. And we wanted to be able to have students that could get involved in our activities that we would incentivize by a sort of a small monetary remuneration that would help us in the generation of the OERs and doing the research. That doesn't mean that if there are people out there that want to join into AgShare that have scholarships and bursaries for students, but that could align whatever the students are doing to AgShare are not welcome. They're very welcome. It's just that we made this choice because we had a limited amount of funding and we needed to be sure that we could produce the deliverables. We didn't want to create a situation where we've got students that have other obligations that might not align themselves with ours. We're looking at AICM. You heard about the AICM and Ag Extension Master students that would be needing field attachment, and these are the ones we are targeting as our translational scholars in the model. And of course, gender is an issue. We are trying to have at least a 50-50 split where possible. So our idea is to link AICM and extension students needing field attachments to science research teams, agricultural science research teams, so that those students would develop more case studies and extension materials. We know that funding is limited, so in this instance, we aren't funding the research aspect. We are basically contributing to facilitating the students' involvement in the co-creation of the case studies and the materials that will come out of the project. We have some activities and timeframes. We're actually in the inception phase, so we're looking at our final implementation plan and our monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan, looking at getting confirmations of participation and finalizing institutional and partner agreements. In the first part of the year, we're going to be looking at staff skilling, mainly with a focus on mainly with a focus on skilling them with regards to development of good resources and knowing what good resources are in terms of science, production, and usability, and dealing with issues of quality assurance within the context of curriculum and teaching and learning. After that, our students will come on board sort of around August, September in the year. They do a whole lot of coursework first, and then they do their dissertations the second year. So in that first year, we'll do activities related to skilling students, helping them develop innovation scholar or translational scholar competences, plus skills development for effective participatory action research. Then after that, we are assuming that we'd have given the staff and the students the basic skills that they need to move forward to the next phase, where they will then be involved in writing for publication. And eventually afterwards, we would work with lecturers to work with the outputs that we have developed and see how we integrate them in the curriculum. What is critical, though, at this point in time is that we are saying we want to start to look at ways of institutionalizing this whole approach and finding funding for it. So in order to be able to do this, we've also going to have a whole lot of high-level advocacy and discussions around curriculum integration and financing to try and ensure long-term sustainability. And we've identified various groups of people that need to be targeted at the institutions. But first and foremost, because we have access to the RUFORUM network, we're going to target those committees and boards for RUFORUM, which are manned by senior management from these institutions that are members of RUFORUM. I haven't said anything about Sokoine. Sokoine is coming on board in a slightly different way. Sokoine has a new PhD in soil and water management, which through research that has been done has been identified as being a program that requires resourcing. And so our focus in terms of this particular institution will be expanding the program resource base for that PhD program. So we'll be involving staff and students in various skills workshops relating more to OER development and participatory action research. We're talking to you today. We're basically looking also for opportunities that would help us to maximize the scaling up and the effectiveness of our AgShare model by leveraging synergies from the development of strategic linkages and partnerships that would contribute to further institutional staff development, opportunities for translational scholars, and we're going to have a database and a repository. And we've sort of talked quite a bit about those, and we're looking at optimizing what we have and making it better and more useful to people. And then, yeah, we're looking for people to work with us to expand the model and its impact as a whole. Oh, already told you that bit. So the next bit requires you to ask any questions for the team. And the team, you're doing the work now, right? The questions are coming to you, not to me. I don't know. Are there any questions? Don't ask hard ones.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Again, I come from the field of the international consulting world, and we focus a lot on value chains. However, agriculture takes place in a landscape, a very complex social and physical landscape. And I'm wondering whether the value chain of focus is a little bit too narrow, in the sense that in that broader agricultural landscape, there's issues of water management, forestry management, land rights, and the horrible complexities right now of large-scale land acquisition, for instance. So how do we build training for the new generation of students about these broader issues in the agricultural landscape writ large? And so I bring this up not to challenge, but to wonder whether we should push the limits a little bit as we look at developing agricultural curriculum that are a little bit vaster in what students and faculty work on.
Okay, well, my initial response to that, and maybe I need to explain why we have that focus. It's because the Gates Foundation wants that particular focus. Okay, so it's kind of more a funder-driven thing. And we are aware of exactly the same things that you are talking about, and maybe in extending AgShare and finding other strategic partnerships and linkages, we can make it bigger and touch on those other aspects. We did kind of deviate a little bit by focusing on that PhD at Sequoia, and looking at it in terms of soil and water management. They let us do that, but I don't know if they'd have let us do it with some other institutions.
Yeah, Alice, I apologize if I wasn't listening well enough, but can you clarify for me whether in the second phase you're going to be using sort of a selected student focus, or whether it's more of a program focus? And what I mean is, are you going to be supporting a limited number of individual students within a degree track to become engaged in action learning activities as part of their degree requirements? Or are you working with your partner institutions to ensure that all of the students within those degree programs are engaged in action learning research? Just
no, I think your first scenario is the correct one. Okay. Remember that in the pilot, we sort of had a whole lot of different things happening. And I think the pilot was there to kind of try and understand what was possible and what was not. Now, what we're trying to do is based on the lessons we've learned, we've picked up on certain things that we are trying to replicate now in a number of institutions, in a number of different programs. Okay. And because of the funding, we can only right now, in order to do it and learn and understand what it means, we've got to work with a select group of students, but we're hoping that it will filter out.
Okay, let me say something a bit provocative then.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's probably far too late to consider it, but there are ways of taking a field opportunity and making that available to a whole group of students as participants in the action learning cycle, as opposed to privileging a individual or perhaps one or two to engage in that same learning process. And the important difference in terms of outcomes are that you have a whole cohort of scholarly practitioners who have had that opportunity, who then go out into the real world and pursue their careers, as opposed to one or two who have that experience, and the rest are sitting along the sidelines using the case study as sort of a virtual way of trying to get a bit of experience in that. And I just would like to encourage you and your team to examine ways in which you might be able to open up those learning experiences to larger groups of students as part of their degree processes. And I mentioned yesterday we've had some experiences here for doing that, and it's worked very well. I think as a student participant in that, and preparing people then to go out in the field. And I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
That's actually a very good idea, and you're sitting next to two gentlemen, one on either side of you, who are part of the team, and we haven't yet set things in stone. So I think I'm encouraged by what you're saying, and I think that we need to consider that, and I think each of them will consider it within the context of their institution and how their institution operates. But we take that. That's a good one. Thank you. The team, have you got anything else you'd like to say or to respond to the questions we were asked? Sorry, I just jumped in there.
I'm also wondering, this is the same sort of question, but in a slightly different direction, to what degree, since these are translational scholars, you're building translation to other stakeholders into the students' assignments, as it were. So, yes, doing case studies and creating materials, but also identifying stakeholders out there seems to me to be part of the translation work that those students ought to be learning, so that you may want to build some of your institutionalization into their roles, because they're in positions to connect with different parts of the institutions themselves.
Great. That's a good idea. Karen? Got any comment?
So a lot of that comes with faculty. And so we are identifying we've got a great team of faculty, and as we get to those institutions, what our contacts are trying to do is include their faculty on these kinds of field initiatives, as well as into projects that they're working on. So I think, we think this is a good idea. This is what we're pursuing, but we don't have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed until we actually get on the campuses with the teams that have wanted to work with us.
Which we start next week.
A question on the way that you plan to organize the material that you're producing as OER. Is it going to be published as part of OER Africa and the collection there, and the YouTube channel that is being used to promote the videos? Do you want to also take advantage of the repository within the RUFORUM and the website of RUFORUM? Which are the ideas there?
That's our third objective, and the whole idea is to try and disseminate as widely as possible. So we've got the OER Africa website, we've got RUFORUM, we've got MSU, we've got all those different websites and so on that the institutions also have, whether they put it internally or externally and so on and so forth. And we are looking at using and placing our stuff as optimally and as widely as possible. Yes, and oh, so that's who he is. Yes, you're going to be helping us. Oh, all right. Setting us up to have a good conversation.
Yeah,
great.
That was all about it.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand over to Nodumo. She does the next section.
Thank you, Alice. My task is very simple. There's some help that we are asking of you or from you today, because we decided that we should start this project with the assessment questions in our plan. Would like to be able to implement as we think about how are we going to be assessed in terms of whether this project has been successful, has been effective, is scalable. So we would like your inputs with regards to the development of appropriate indicators that we can use as we go along to sort of self-evaluate and understand where we are going. So what we would like to do is we have put out some sheets of paper in about 8 tables. There's groups 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4. So there are 2 group 1s, 2 group 2s, etc. And group 1, if you are sitting on a table which has a sheet labeled group 1, I hope you wrote them, Joanne. You are going to assist us respond to the question of which indicators would be effective, would measure the effectiveness of the AgShare model at the student level. This means the experiences of the student. Group 2 will look at indicators for effectiveness of the AgShare model at the program level. And Group 3 would look at indicators for effectiveness of the AgShare model at the institutional level. Group 4, indicators for scalability of the model. We do appreciate that there's another level which we are not asking you to look at. This is the community level, the farmer level, the level that's high up there. But there's a reason for that in terms of the scope of the project. So I'm not sure how long we've got to do this in terms of time. Sorry? About 30 minutes. Okay. So maybe what we do, we spend 15 minutes. I think 15 minutes would suffice. So please, if you could get to a table with a paper and okay, thank you. I think we can start collecting the feedback now. We'll start maybe with the group at the end. If you could present your feedback.
Okay. Indicators for effectiveness at the student level, we had relevant employability, meaning how many of them were employed as compared to the control group, and how relevant was their employment to the information that they acquired. Customer feedback, basically at the community level, did people in the community think that this was good or effective? It seemed like with the livestock example, there was a lot of positive customer feedback, and that's a meaningful thing. The desirability of the program among students, or number of likes. So if there's 8 students total and 2 of them are in this program, and the other 6, when you ask afterwards, say, I wish I was in that program because they had such a better master's experience and they got to do all this cool stuff, that's meaningful. It's kind of like they were jealous. That means it was good. Uptake of stuff, meaning uptake of the knowledge material produced, essentially. How was it uptaken? Was it downloaded off the internet? Was it used by people in the community? And I think most importantly, was it used, we're talking about using that material then for next year's training of students. So if that livestock example, they took the data from that, and then, that was 2 weeks of a course next year to train the students to do the same thing, that means it was pretty useful, probably. Or it was just close by. Hopefully it was pretty useful. Speed to output. The theory would be that if this program is in fact more efficient, I'd say speed and quality to output. If this program is in fact more efficient at getting meaningful and relevant information, then in theory it should take you less time to finish a master's, right? So you should be able to, I know everyone's like, what? It's testable theory, but you should get a higher quality product in less amount of time, maybe. Self-defined personal success. This is sort of the X factor. 7 years later, when you ask someone who's in the program, how important was this program in your life, and they say it was life-changing and it was amazing and it's sort of what turned things around. That's ultimately the thing that all this stuff wants to measure. If you don't ask 7 years later, you'll never know. If the program's still around in 7 years, how great would that be? Then you'll know if it was good or not. So that's what we have.
Thank you for that. I think we should listen to the other group 1 so that we don't go off in a tangent.
So we identify a number of indicators. One will be job placement after the program, number of students in rural research situations, number of research projects being documented for the different audiences, number of linkages between students and farmers associations after the program, number of interactions with farmers categorized by gender and by social categories, and the perception of satisfaction at the farmers level from a student's input, and the perception of satisfaction at the student level with the program in general. And last, a number of improved agricultural practices adopted by farmers.
Thank you. And then we can hear from group 2, the first group 2. Yeah.
Okay. Call upon the loudmouth. There we go. So let's turn this around so I can read it. We agreed that job placement is good not only for the individual students, but as an aggregate for the academic program. If they find that their students are being placed in relevant positions across the board, then that is an improvement for the effectiveness of the academic program. Expansion of research and curriculum boundaries. If your students are asking for different courses as a result of this, and that's a good thing, or more courses or more in-depth courses, and if your researchers are doing research beyond the boundaries that they were originally exploring, then that is a sign of strength in the academic program. If we see an increase in collaborations across disciplines, then that is an increase in this in the academic program's quality. And also, if we see an increase in enrollment and/or applications, recognizing that enrollment may be fixed, but if you have more demand for that enrollment, then clearly the academic program is being perceived as improving.
Thank you. The other group 2.
Hi, everyone. We also we're group 2, indicators for effectiveness of AgShare model at academic program level. The first indicator was participation rates, and we looked at that for faculty, students, departments, institutions, also the general public as well. Second point was the integration into the curriculum, and that was about acceptance by the faculty, whether that was incorporated and led to the development of new teaching materials, and also into materials that might support more flexible application and transfer into the real world. Third point was changes in understanding and behavior, specifically the habits of mind. So we were looking again at whether it was supporting deep understanding of content and application to the real world with faculty and students. Like the first group, we were interested in tracking users. Sometimes we would be asking them questions about how, to get their feedback. In other ways, we would just be doing things that they would be unaware of. So, if they log in through Facebook or Twitter, we'd be grabbing everything they could get and maybe gleaning some information about, how that knowledge was being transferred to the real world. And the last point was increase in innovation. So if these resources led to new ideas and new tools and new resources, then that would be another way to measure it. Thanks.
Thank you. We move on to group 3.
Thank you. Our group discussed, so we were speaking about indicators for effectiveness of AgShare model at the institution level. We talked about the indicators we felt were, 1, how the model has changed the institution overall. And 2, are there any new policies to support better methods of teaching and learning, including research, all based on the AgShare model. Also, as a little star to that, we also just wanted to see evidence of working towards implementing the items so just the fact of implementing better teaching and learning methods and research methods. 3, has institution received positive feedback on implementing the AgShare model? 4, testimonies, are they positive? And the last, evidence of activities that are, working towards all of these and specifically working towards the teaching and learning.
Thank you very much, Lori.
Okay, thank you. For us, we have identified adoption rate from faculty members, meaning how much they are willing to go with the model. We have also enrollment of students in the program and completion rate of students, employability of same students after completion of the program, satisfaction level from faculty, student, management regarding the program and the model, management support level, meaning head of the institution, dean of faculty, etc. Research outcomes, including reports, articles, and replicability. Replicability, meaning if we decided to go with the AgShare model to go to another domain, like, for example, medicine or something else. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're group 4. So our task was to look at scalability. So we had 2 sets of indicators that we identified. First of all, for the AgShare program for that model, those indicators. And then secondly, the expansion locale indicators. So their ability to implement, to receive that model and then implement. So first of all, for AgShare, the number one indicator is a sustainable business model or source of donor funding that would allow for scalability to the level that is envisioned. Secondly, effective across multiple pilot locations. So if for example, there was demonstrated effectiveness at one pilot location but not at 4, then perhaps the answer is right now it's not scalable. Let's look at what we need to do to make it effective across all the pilot locations to make sure we're doing the right thing that's across all of them. And then third, if you look at the model, the very center is impact on farming. So there has to be demonstrated impact on farming for this program in order for it to truly become a scalable program. So it can't just be students, it can't just be academic program or institution. It has to be, is there a real impact on farming? So then for the locations that would receive the program in an expansion, is there sufficient demand for the Masters of Science program? So there has to be a focus from a disciplinary standpoint so that there's a need to bring this program to a location. Understanding of the impact on farming. So that location has to be able to understand the impact on farming and then translate it to the local stakeholders to engage them in the process of implementation. And then third, organizationally and human capacity to implement. So there has to be enough of a network, a local network, to build and draw on to create this capacity needed to implement the program.
Thank you very much. I think there was just one group 4. Yeah, thank you. I think this is a job well done. My team, I think, is very happy. Yes. I would like to hand over now to Karen. Yeah, thank you.